animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That sentence was written in 1945. It is short, it is simple, and it explains the mechanics of power better than any political science textbook. The author is George Orwell, a man who fought in Spain, was shot through the throat, saw propaganda from the inside, and learned firsthand how language becomes a weapon. His book, Animal Farm, is a fairy tale, a children's story, with pigs, horses, and sheep. 120 pages. You can read it in a single evening. But after that evening, you will listen differently to politicians, to advertising, to the news, and even to your own boss. Because this book is not about animals. It is about how, every single day, people persuade you with beautiful, righteous, warm words. Words that make you want to nod along. Words that make obedience feel like your own free choice. The plot is simple. Animals live on a farm. They work for a farmer named Jones. One day they revolt, drive him out, and set up their own rule. They write 7 commandments of equality on the wall and begin to build a just society. Sound familiar? Almost every revolution begins this way, with hope, with beautiful words, with promises. But what happens next is the very heart of everything we are about to discuss. Because next, the pigs come to power. And here it is important not to lie by getting seduced by a pretty slogan. The pigs do not seize power with words alone. When a rival has to be driven out, Napoleon releases 9 enormous dogs that he secretly raised in isolation. Power is seized by violence, by raw fear. But holding power on fear alone is expensive and unstable. And this is where words step in. Squealer does not force the animals to obey. He makes them obey on their own and believe it was their own choice. Force takes power. Words make you carry that power on your own shoulders and think the whole thing was your idea. That is exactly why words are more dangerous than the dogs. You can see a dog, but a word works in the dark. One pig becomes the key to everything. His name is Squealer. The book says he could turn black into white. He does not hit anyone, and he does not threaten anyone. He simply explains. Why does the milk now go only to the pigs? Because milk contains substances needed for mental work. And who does the mental work? The pigs. So this is not a privilege. It is a sacrifice the pigs make for everyone's sake. Do you hear how those words work? A privilege turns into a sacrifice. Inequality turns into necessity. And the animals nod along. Because the words are beautiful. Because doubt is frightening. Because anyone who doubts risks ending up on the enemy's side. And who is the enemy? That is another discovery this book offers. There is always an enemy. And when there is none, one will be invented. Because without an enemy, persuasion is harder. And here it is worth pausing, honestly, on what the science says about this, not just the fairy tale. Because I do not want you to take my word for it. That would be exactly the thing this whole conversation stands against. The psychologists Jeff Greenberg, Tom Pazinski, and Sheldon Solomon built what they called terror management theory. Dozens of experiments revealed one consistent pattern. When a person is reminded of a threat or of their own mortality, they cling more tightly to their own group, treat outsiders more harshly, and more eagerly support strong, charismatic leaders. In one study, even a simple reminder of death increased support for a sitting politician at the polls. An honest detail matters here. The effect is real and has been documented many times, but scientists still argue about how strong it is, and not every attempt to reproduce it has succeeded. So it is not a magic button. It is a tendency, but a tendency on which propaganda has been built in every era. A threat appears, and you are no longer looking for facts. You are looking for a protector. Someone who will say, "Do not be afraid. I know what to do. Just listen to me." That is exactly what the pigs on the farm do. And if it seems to you that none of this applies to you, just think about how many news stories begin with the word threat. Now for the mechanics. 5 techniques. Each one is in the book. Each one you meet every single day. The first is renaming, the most elegant form of influence. You do not change reality, you change its name, and people perceive it differently. On the farm, the pigs do not steal food. They redistribute resources. They do not seize privileges. They receive the necessary provisions for management. They do not live in the farmer's house. They are stationed at headquarters for the sake of efficiency. Think about how many times you have heard something like this. Layoffs become optimization. A pay cut becomes a compensation review. Censorship becomes moderation. Surveillance becomes personalization. This is not some scriptwriter's invention. The linguist George Lakoff of the University of California, Berkeley, spent decades studying what he called framing. His conclusion is simple. A person does not think in bare facts, but in frames through which those facts are perceived. Change the frame, and the very same fact feels like its opposite. A tax is a burden, or a contribution to a shared future. One event, 2 frames, 2 opposite feelings. Whoever gets to name things shapes the way you think before you have even started to think. The second technique is simplification. The pigs do not explain the farm's economy to the animals. They give them a slogan. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That is all. No nuance. Only black and white. And the animals chant it in chorus until it becomes part of how they think. Why does this work? Because a complex thought costs the brain effort, and a slogan costs nothing. A slogan is a paved highway laid down where an honest answer would have been rough terrain. This does not mean people are stupid. It means the brain saves energy, and whoever offers the simple instead of the true takes advantage of that. The third technique is rewriting memory. Perhaps the most chilling mechanism in the book. The pigs rewrite the commandments, literally. It used to read, "No animal shall sleep in a bed." It became, "No animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets." It used to read, "No animal shall kill another animal." It became, "Without cause." 2 words, and an absolute law turns into a rubber rule. And the animals look at the wall and say, "We must have just forgotten. It was probably always like that." And once again, this is not only a fairy tale. The cognitive psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, together with John Palmer, ran a classic experiment in 1974. People were shown video of a car crash and asked how fast the cars were going. One group was asked how fast they were going when they contacted each other. Another group was asked how fast they were going when they smashed into each other. 1 word of difference. And the people who heard smashed estimated a noticeably higher speed. And a week later, they were more likely to recall broken glass that was never in the video. 1 word changed a memory. Now multiply that by the thousands of words you hear every day. How many of your memories are truly your own? The fourth technique is creating an enemy. On the farm, the enemy has a name: Snowball. A pig who was at first a hero of the revolution and was then driven out. And after he is gone, everything bad becomes his fault. A bad harvest? Snowball. The windmill collapsed? Snowball. A cow fell sick? Snowball poisoned the water. This works flawlessly because an enemy serves three functions at once. It explains everything bad without the leaders ever admitting a mistake. It unites everyone against a common threat. And it turns any criticism into betrayal, because whoever criticizes the pigs must be on Snowball's side. How easily this divide switches on was shown by the psychologist Henri Tajfel in 1971. In his experiments, people were split into groups based on completely random, trivial traits. For example, which of two painters they preferred. There were no real conflicts, and still, people began to favor their own and shortchange the others, simply because an us and a them had appeared. We are biologically inclined to split the world into our own and the strangers, and whoever knows this button can press it at any time. The fifth technique is repetition, and it is the most insidious of all. The pigs did not say once that everything was fine. They repeated it every day. At meetings, at celebrations, in speeches. Napoleon is always right. Napoleon is always right. Napoleon is always right. This is not an argument. It is an incantation. And it works through what psychologists call the illusory truth effect. The researcher Lisa Fazio studied it, in part at Vanderbilt University. When a person hears a claim repeated, it starts to feel more true, even when it is false, and even when the person knows the correct answer. The brain confuses familiarity with truth. I have heard this many times, so it must be true. No, you have heard it many times because someone wanted you to believe it. Now, connect it all. Rename the problem. Simplify it to a slogan. Rewrite the memory. Appoint an enemy. Repeat without stopping. This is not theory. It is a working manual. Politicians, corporations, the media, and influencers all use it. They are using it right now. And that raises a question Orwell never answered, because each person has to answer it for themselves. What do you do once you have recognized the manipulation? There is a character in the book that almost everyone forgets. The old donkey, Benjamin. He sees everything. He knows the pigs are lying. He knows the commandments have been rewritten, and he does nothing. Benjamin is the image of the one who understands everything and stays silent. The one who stands off to the side and says, "I always knew it would turn out this way." He is the most uncomfortable character because he is a mirror. You see the manipulation in an ad and you stay silent. You realize the news is one-sided and you change the channel. You know you are being managed at work and you nod along, because pushing back is awkward. Because it is easier to be a clever donkey than a horse that might be wrong. The horse, Boxer, is the opposite. He works and he believes. His motto is, "I will work harder." And that very belief is what kills him. When he falls ill and can no longer work, the pigs send him to the slaughterhouse. And here is a moment that cannot be twisted because it matters. The animals did not believe the lie right away, and not out of laziness. When the van came for Boxer, the donkey Benjamin was the first to read the writing on its side, raised the alarm, and everyone rushed after it, shouting at Boxer to kick the doors out. They understood everything in that very instant. The lie came later. A few days afterward, Squealer calmly explained that it had been the doctor's carriage, that the old sign just had not been repainted yet. And he added a touching invention about Boxer's final words. And then, under the weight of authority and repetition, the animals gave in. Not because believing is easier, but because, against a calm and confident voice backed by dogs, pushing back is frightening, and there is no one to do it with. Two traps. The first is blind trust. Not the kind that comes from laziness, but the kind that comes from devotion. Boxer believed that if he worked honestly and asked no questions, the system would repay him. He died with that belief. The second is educated inaction. Benjamin understood everything, and he was the first to raise the alarm by the van. But for years before that, he knew the truth and stayed quiet, because he figured that knowing was enough. At the decisive moment, it turned out to be too late. Knowledge without action is a luxury for the person manipulation has not touched personally yet. But it always touches you eventually. The only question is when. In most of us, there is a little of both Boxer and Benjamin. In some places, we believe and work without lifting our heads. In others, we see everything and keep quiet. The question is not about branding yourself with a single label. It is about noticing where, right now, you are standing closest to that wall of rewritten commandments, and whether you can take even one step to the side. The book ends with a scene that is impossible to forget. The animals look through the window of the house where the pigs sit at a table together with the humans, drinking, playing cards, laughing. And the animals look from pig to human, from human to pig, and they can no longer tell one from the other. Those who promised freedom have become the very thing people once needed saving from. And all of it without a single shot, with words alone. The book was written back in '45, but every day it grows more relevant, because the tools have not vanished. They have evolved. The squealer of '45 had a voice and a podium. The modern squealer has algorithms, targeted advertising, and access to your data around the clock. He knows what you searched for yesterday, what you are afraid of, which words you react to. And he selects exactly the ones that will break exactly your defenses. How do you resist this? 5 simple practices. The first, check the names. When you hear a beautiful word describing something unpleasant, stop and ask, what actually stands behind it? Is optimization just a layoff? Are necessary measures just restrictions? Peel off the label and look at what is underneath. The second, beware of simplicity. When someone gives a simple answer to a complex question, it is usually not wisdom, but a slogan. The real world is complex. Anyone who says everything is simple either does not understand the problem or does not want you to understand it. The third, protect your memory. Write the promises down. Compare what was said a year ago with what is being said today. Commandments get rewritten not only on the walls of fairy tale farms, they get rewritten in campaign platforms and corporate reports. If you did not keep the original, you will never notice the swap. The fourth, recognize the phantom enemy. When you were told that all the troubles come from one single person, stop. Real problems rarely have a single cause. If you are being offered one guilty party, then most likely someone is steering your gaze away from the real source. And that source is often the very one pointing the finger. The fifth, do not stay only a spectator. And here, honestly, staying silent is not always cowardice. Sometimes it is a sober calculation. There is something to lose at work. There is not enough energy for everything, and family matters more than an argument in the comments. That is normal, and no one is obligated to fight on every front at once. The pause is not the danger. The danger is the habit of always staying silent, when knowing and doing nothing becomes a way of life. You do not have to be a hero and march into the square. Sometimes it is enough to say out loud to even one person, "I see what is happening, and I do not agree." One word like that is already more than nothing. Animal Farm is not a warning from the past. It is a mirror of the present. The pigs have learned to wear suits. Squealer landed a job as a press secretary. The commandments turned into terms of service that no one reads. And Boxer works 60 hours a week, believes the system will protect him, and one day we'll see a van with the words "workforce optimization" on the side. And Benjamin will stand beside him and stay silent, as always. The only question is whether you will be standing beside him too, or whether, instead, you will be the one who walks up to the wall and reads the commandments with your own eyes. Not through someone else's retelling, your own, and sees what is actually written there. Because the entire meaning of this fairy tale fits into a single sentence. Whoever controls the words controls reality, and whoever checks the words stays free. And one last thing. Checking everything is impossible, and it is not necessary. Manipulation does not hold because you failed to check something. It holds because you stopped doubting. So do not draw a conclusion just because it was presented to you beautifully, even if I am the one who presented it.